My name is Qi Luyi, an ordinary junior student at a university. It all starts with the bus that day I was dragged into a wild dream, where there was only one purpose. To live, no matter what kind of posture. The spiritual world of atheists is collapsing, shouting and crying, crawling and walking in this infinite virtual space. But is this really a dream? Why is everything so familiar? How should I escape from here? I must live on. Novel keywords. Welcome to Unlimited Nightmare without pop-ups, welcome to Unlimited Nightmare TXT Complete Collection Download, welcome to the latest chapter of Unlimited Nightmare to read. Chapter 1. Welcome to Infinite Nightmares. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Welcome to Infinite Nightmares, player identity loading completed. Welcome to Infinite Nightmare. A cold mechanical female voice suddenly came in. Qi Lu woke up from a strange room, and the dim light temporarily made his eyes unable to adapt, pulling his thoughts back to his mind. Welcome to the world of nightmares, I am your system assistant Xiao Meng. After Qi Lu calmed down, he finally saw the house in front of him clearly. The area is not large, and the room is filled with a bed, a sofa, a round table, and a TV. Qi Lu stood up and wanted to open the door, but the unlocked door remained motionless. Ding dong, players are advised not to move around freely. You have not yet cleared any nightmares, so you are unable to freely move in the dream world at this time. There are still 10 minutes left before entering the nightmare, players are advised to prepare well. Qi Lu was momentarily stunned before sitting down on the sofa in the dark. He only took 5 minutes to accept all the unreasonable situations in front of him. Yes, he was suddenly pulled into this world, what is called an infinite nightmare. 10 minutes ago, as usual, someone else took the bus from a university directly to their home. With only a dozen or so minutes of travel, they flashed through Qi Lu's mind like a horse lantern. He just wore headphones as usual, closed his eyes, and looked forward to dinner at home on the weekend. Just today, the bus suddenly accelerated, and the soothing music in the earphones suddenly became harsh. The sky, which should have been clear for thousands of miles, pulled down a piece of black silk and hung a blood moon, emitting blood and staining half of the black silk. The driver who suddenly disappeared, the panicked footsteps of the passengers, curses, and screams of terror all hit Qi Lu's heart, which was pounding wildly. Yes, then he lost consciousness and came here. He was also referred to as a player by a cold mechanical female voice, and was told to pass the nightmare level. Qi Luyi has read novels about time travel and infinite flow, but he does not believe that these will really exist and happen to himself without warning. Ding dong, there are still 5 minutes left before entering the nightmare. Players are advised to prepare well. Next, we will present the storyline of this nightmare, which will help players better pass the level. Please grasp all the clues that are beneficial to you and wish you success. That is a glorious kingdom, where the esteemed king and queen have won the hearts of the people. They have made the entire country live a life without worrying about food and clothing. Legend has it that there is a princess in this country who is so beautiful that no one has ever seen her true face. However, this kingdom with a history of hundreds of years has finally not been peaceful in recent years. Every year, on the eve of Zhongyuan Festival's Day, some maids will be missing, leaving no trace and causing panic. You are an orphan who was sold into the palace, accompanied by several young girls. You are waiting to be selected by the queen to serve the princess, because that is the supreme opportunity. You want to seize it well. The plot introduction came to an end here. As soon as Qi Lu felt his body sinking and his consciousness gradually became unclear, he fainted. New writer, writing for the first time, please be patient. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Skin Replacement. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Skin Replacement. Consciousness gradually returned, and the dazzling light blinded the eyes. Qi Luyi heard faint words as his tinnitus subsided. Are there only a few this year? When Qi Luyi completely regained his composure, he found himself standing with his head lowered. The remaining light scanned and realized that it should be a courtyard with people standing around him, and there were 10 people in total. Slowly lifting his head, he saw a house made of black wood, with several rooms surrounding the courtyard in half. The roof tiles were sparkling, and one corner of the eaves was raised high. A plaque was hung at the door, with the words, "Cloud Beginning," written on it. This is clearly not a 21st century architecture, and there is no indication of any dynasty. This should be an empty world, Qi Luyi thought wholeheartedly. Touching the clothes on my body, it was a coarse linen garment with patches in a few places. Yes, sir, all the women who entered the palace this year are here. Qi Luyi looked at the two people talking under the eaves with confusion. A man with low eyebrows and pleasing eyes was introducing himself to another dignified and generous man with a flattering smile. The dignified standing man turned his head with the words. Qi Luyi immediately lowered his head. Then please trouble this father.in.law to settle them down. The queen will be summoned in a few days, and I will inform you when the time comes. Yes, sir. After the man left, the flattering man withdrew his smile and turned to the crowd, saying coldly, "Behind this is the place where the girls rest. There are 5 rooms, each of which can be allocated by themselves. I am Zhang Gonggang, the steward here, and I won't disturb you. Grandma will teach you etiquette later, and the girls can do it themselves. Just say it and leave." Qi Luyi and the girls around him walked towards the house in unison. Qi Luyi. What kind of ghosts are the girls? The plot only says I am an orphan, not a girl. Or are they blind and unable to see? My long skirt is obviously not a girl. Wait, long skirt. Qi Luyi suddenly lowered his head and realized that he was clearly wearing a women's-style long skirt. He slowly moved to the edge of the small pool next to him in disbelief. The reflection in the water was clearly his own face, but his eyebrows and eyes softened a lot, more like a sensitive woman. Take a deep breath and clamp your legs as if making a decision. Fortunately, I am still here. Thank God, I have come back to life again. Qi Luyi let out a breath, and after his death, Jia Sheng had already exhausted his body and mind. Strolling into the western room, looking around for a week, I sat down at the round table in the middle. There is currently a shortage of roommates in the room, and I don't know which unlucky one will come with me. Qi Luyi grabbed his head and thought, feeling sad for his opposite-sex roommate. In an instant, he saw a black crescent-shaped pattern on his left wrist. Qi Luyi touched it with his fingers, and suddenly a transparent plate appeared in front of him, on which several lines of words appeared. Plot. Skin replacement, difficulty. Simple mode. Multiplayer mode, task. Find the princess and uncover the truth. Current player stamina. 60, force value. 30. Qi Luyi was puzzled and asked, what does it mean to find the princess? He couldn't help but wonder if the missing maid in the plot might be related to this princess. Dear player, it literally means yo ___. The mechanical female voice suddenly rang out in my mind. Qi Luyi. Alright, what about finding the princess? Dear player, once you find the real princess, this nightmare will end. The system will determine your level based on your clearance situation, allocate points and gifts according to the corresponding level, and you can redeem the goods you need in the mall based on the points. Of course you are a beginner, and we will also give beginner gifts, which are disposable. Lucky gifts can save lives in critical moments. You can open your backpack to check. Qi Luyi opened his backpack and saw a black cloak in front of him. Newcomer gift. Invisibility cloak, disposable, skill. Wearing it can make you invisible and last for 3 minutes. Qi Luyi. It's also quite practical. In a moment, he noticed a white flower suddenly appearing next to his invisibility cloak, but it was just a bud that had not yet bloomed. Like a camellia, he tapped its attributes. Name. To be grown, skill. Qi Luyi looked at the question mark and was puzzled. He thought it was a casual gift from the system, so he didn't pay attention to it. Uncertain balance between painting skin and changing skin, end of this chapter. Chapter 3. Skin Replacement. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Skin Replacement. Qi Luyi raised his forehead with a black line on his face and gritted his teeth, asking, "What kind of ghost is my identity? Why am I a girl?" Dear player, this is the plot requirement, and the system will create suitable characters for each player according to the plot arrangement. This is a dream world, and everything is possible. Although you may appear to be a girl on the surface, you are still in charge. Qi Luyi. Oh, your sister, she's so scared. One more question, when Qi Luyi thought of it. Multiplayer mode. How many players besides me? Are they all here? The multiplayer mode includes 3 or more players, and I cannot tell you the specific number of players. You need to search for partners on your own, and of course, it cannot be entirely partners. However, one thing is that players cannot kill other players, otherwise it will be considered a violation and trigger the death condition as a beginner. What I can remind you is that players in simple mode are mostly assigned together, which is arranged that you can easily see Qi Luyi closed the panel and pondered over the system, hesitating whether to search for other players. The system indicates that the player should be among these girls, and in this nightmare, it can be a cooperative or hostile relationship, which does not rule out the possibility of using knives to kill. To be honest, Qi Luyi has always had a bad premonition, and it is a very bad premonition. As if sensing something, Qi Luyi looked up at the door. A slender figure was sneakily lying at the door and looking inside. When the people inside noticed it, they pretended not to be looking around, and their eyes occasionally fell on Qi Luyi. Qi Luyi. On how many social deaths one encounters with classmates after transitioning. He remembers that she was also on the bus, and she was sitting next to him, sleeping soundly. Duan Miao Miao opened his eyes and arrived at a strange place. After listening to a long storyline, he stood in the middle of the crowd, recalling what the system had said. While scanning, he was shocked to find a woman who looked very similar to Qi Luyi. With a feeling of disbelief and shyness, he slowly followed the woman to the front of the house. When she saw the woman in front of her, she was afraid of recognizing the wrong person, so she averted her gaze and pretended to notice the look of her missing roommate. So when Qi Luyi saw the girl's clumsy shock, her almost identical steps, and her extremely eerie face. Qi Luyi, he muttered as if chewing his mouth apart. Qi Luyi. Although I really don't want to admit it, let's forget it. I've seen someone who looks familiar, let's consider it a teammate for now. Qi Luyi responded with a look of death as if returning home. Then he saw the girl's face twisted for a moment. To be honest, he had never seen such rich expressions on a girl's face before. Sleeping slot. Ha ha ha, ha ha ha, it's really you. Ha ha ha, ah, ah. How did you become like this? Ha ha ha, ah. Ha. Or do you usually dress up as a man? Ha ha ha, ha. The girl's barbell-like laughter made Qi Luyi's face blush and almost bleed, and the veins in his neck burst out. At this moment, he longed for a crack to penetrate. Duan Miao Miao stopped teasing him when he saw his head about to explode. After hearing the story of Qi Luyi, she came up to him mysteriously and whispered. We are sisters now. We sisters work together to solve the case. It's exciting to think about it. Qi Luyi. Take back what you just said, it's okay if this teammate doesn't have it. God, come and strike her with lightning, and also strike me. He exhaled a deep breath and decided to ignore Duan Miao Miao's words. Have you seen your system? It's the mark on your left wrist, Qi Luyi reminded, feeling that the girl's head was not very smart. With this touch, Duan Miao Miao reached out to touch the crescent sign on his left hand and saw the transparent panel in front of him. Qi Luyi realized that she couldn't see the other party's panel, so she asked her what the system displayed and wanted to see what was different from her. Find the princess. We still need to find out the truth. We're all in the palace, are you afraid we won't be able to find the princess? Is it so difficult? Newcomer gift. Infinite power medicine. Why is it still disposable? Duan Miao Miao couldn't help but sigh as he closed the panel. In the early stage, the protagonist may not have a sense of death, but some children's plays may mature later on. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Skin Replacement. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Skin Replacement. Qi Luyi opened his mouth slightly, hesitating to speak. He also wanted to ask why it was disposable. Qi Luyi, what is your beginner gift? It should be more useful than mine, right? I don't think it would be that simple. If we had found the princess so easily, there would have been no such thing as death. There would definitely be conditions for death. Qi Luyi ignored the girl's question and analyzed it. He seemed to have overlooked something in his intuition, but he couldn't remember it. We can first collect clues. Since we are players, let's explore NPC clues and see if we can get any information about the princess. Qi Luyi turned his head and saw the girl's wide eyes, which puzzled him. Duan Miao Miao withdrew his gaze and said, "My classmate heard you say so much for the first time in 3 years. I thought you had a bad temper and was not easy to get in touch with, but I didn't expect you to be a slow-heating type. I think we should ask those girls like us before that grandma comes, maybe they know something." After speaking, Duan Miao Miao stood up and smiled slightly at Qi Luyi, lifting his chin and gesturing to him. After a moment of contemplation, Qi Luyi felt it was feasible and got up to go out with Duan Miao Miao to search for the lucky one. Entering the courtyard again, the two of them found that it was not too small. The house was located to the north, west, and east, surrounded by the courtyard. A row of slate roads extended out of the courtyard door to the south, and a pine tree stood beside the door. The slanted reflection was lush in the pool under the tree. The two walked to the room to the north, with the door to the room on the right open. Inside, a young girl sat at a table drinking water, with a delicate face and clear apricot eyes that made her temperament gentle. The two exchanged a tacit glance and nodded. "It's up to you." Before entering the room, Miao Miao made a silent gesture to Qi Luyi, fearing that he would open his mouth and the girl would drive them out. "Hello sister, we don't have any tea in our room. Can you let us in as an excuse for tea?" Qingzhu looked up and saw two young girls standing in front of her house, with bright smiles and well-behaved faces, talking lightly. Behind her was a delicate and indifferent young girl. As a qualified NPC, Qingzhu hesitated for a moment before nodding and saying with a smile, "Come in. I happen to have an extra cup here, and my roommate hasn't used it either. Come in and sit down." The two of them walked into the room and sat down. The building inside was no different from theirs, with only one person inside and the other person not knowing where to go. "Thank you so much, sister. We have a good relationship." Duan Miao Miao smiled innocently and said happily. Qingzhu poured tea for the two and pushed them down in front of them, saying with a smile, "Just call me Qingzhu. The two of them have a close relationship with me and happen to enter the palace together. Qingzhu, my name is Miao Miao, and she is Luyi. Actually, we have never been very clear about the reason for entering the palace." Green Bamboo was surprised, and then smiled. "You don't even know this. Every year before Zhongyuan festival, women are chosen to enter the palace, as if it had started 5 years ago. Entering the palace is to work for the current queen, who is sent by her. The queen is a phoenix, jade, and golden body, and her mother is in the world. Working by her side is a matter of honor for us ordinary people." Qi Luyi nodded and thought to himself, "Do you work for the queen? Since we have been summoned to the palace, is Zhongyuan festival coming soon?" Qi Luyi asked what he thought. Green Bamboo paused, nodded and said, "Yes, today is only 5 days away from Zhongyuan festival." "What kind of person is the princess?" Duan Miao Miao continued. Suddenly, the green bamboo looked admiring and worshipping, and said, "The princess never showed up with her true face. She was covered with gauze. But it is said that she was like a fairy. But she was jealous of her appearance. It was said that 5 years ago, she had a strange disease. Zhongyuan festival was very serious. Only those women who were elected to the palace could serve the princess, and she liked her." End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Skin Replacement. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 6. Skin Replacement. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Skin Replacement. Shan Jing widened her eyes and pointed trembling at Qi Luyi, saying, "Are you players too?" After Qi Luyi confirmed that this person was also a player, he immediately whispered, "It's not good to discuss loudly here. Let's talk slowly in another place." Shan Jing followed the two to the latter's house, feeling a lot more at ease in her heart. At least she didn't face it alone. Tears involuntarily welled up as she thought of this and sobbed, "Woo woo woo woo, I thought it was just me, you must help me." After Shan Jing's emotions calmed down for a moment, after a brief introduction, Duan Miao Miao asked, "Do you know the current situation of this nightmare? We are going to gather intelligence together. Would you be willing to join us?" Shan Jingnua nodded and said, "If you're willing, you must take me with you. I'm too scared and don't know what to do." She was silent for a moment and continued. "I heard a maid whispering to a girl in the toilet that day. They said that it was almost Zhongyuan festival, and the queen's candidate was summoned. It was said that the girls who had been selected before had disappeared and never came back." Duan Miao Miao's eyes widened slightly, and he said with a hint of excitement, "What does it mean to be gone? Missing or dead? Damn it, things are starting to become suspenseful." Shan Jing couldn't help but tremble and stammered, "I don't know, I'm too scared. I didn't hear anything from behind." Qi Luyi touched his chin and pondered. Sure enough, these must be the reasons for their disappearance, but where did they go? Could they already be more or less unlucky? As it gradually got dark, Shan Jing had to go back to her room to rest. After seeing off Shan Jing, Qi Luyi and Duan Miao Miao both lay on the bed to rest. Due to today's exhaustion, the two of them quickly fell asleep, and the oil lamp on the table went out, leaving only a small candle. The faint light could only illuminate the round table, and the wind blowing through the crack of the door swayed the candlelight. The swaying candlelight slightly shone through the slightly open crack of the door, where there was clearly an eye covered in red blood, staring at the candlelight inside the room. Perhaps because it was too eager to squeeze into the crack of the door, its eyeball was about to fall out. It was patrolling around, as if searching for someone. The crack in the door opened slightly due to the squeezing of its eyes, and a sudden wind blew through the crack, extinguishing the candlelight inside the room. Its eyes seemed unwilling and slowly retreated. But the two of Qi Duan, who were lying in bed and peacefully dreaming, did not know all of this. The sky was adorned with a golden morning glow. It was the second day they had come to a nightmare, still learning etiquette. The newly recovered energy was encroached upon by exhaustion. As soon as Qi Luyi felt that he had not yet started to get back on track, his stamina was almost depleted. It is still calm today, but the closer we get to Zhongyuan festival, the more we are worried about it. After finally finishing a day of studying etiquette, Shan Jing met again in Qi Duan's room. "I heard that the queen is about to summon someone, probably the day after tomorrow." Shan Jing told the two of them what she heard today. Qi Luyi nodded and said, "We need to think of a way to get close to the princess as soon as possible. First, we need to inquire about the princess's palace, but we cannot be too obvious. Collecting more information will be beneficial to us without any harm." Duan Miao Miao nodded weakly, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath, saying, "Let's go find those maids to ask. Oh my God, if we don't see you again, I feel like I'm going to be exhausted. When can I get into the main storyline? These days can't last a day, let's get some excitement. After finishing speaking, he weakly leaned onto the table and stared at the teacup in front of him with empty eyes. Shan Jing stared incredulously at the complaining girl and sighed at how heartfelt she was. Looking at Qi Luyi again, she seemed to be saying, "Has she always been like this?" Qi Luyi. He got used to it. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Skin Replacement. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Skin Replacement. The three of them took advantage of the dusk to find the two maids who came to deliver the meal. They first pulled the maids into the rockery by the small pool, pretending to be idle and curious, and played tricks on the maids. The maidservants looked slightly older than them, probably only 25.6 years old. One had a baby face, while the other had two paired curls on her smile, and the other was delicate and elegant. Baby-faced maids like to chat with people, and it seems like they talk endlessly. How long have the two sisters been in the palace? We have no other intention, we just want to ask for your advice and learn more experience. Duan Miao Miao's solo approach to the theme. I have been here for 10 years now, and she is quite impressive. She has been in the palace for 12 years and has been working with Wang Mama since she was young. You have just entered the palace, so if you have any questions, you can ask us. We will let you know what we know. The doll-faced maid pointed to the maid next to her and smiled. Qi Luyi said, "That's great. Sister, do you know where all the girls who were selected to enter the palace before went?" The girl with a baby face was stunned for a moment and said, "I'm not quite sure about this. I heard from Grandma Wang that it seems like the queen was not very satisfied and secretly sent out of the palace. Some of them were also sent elsewhere, but I haven't seen them since." Duan Miao Miao said, "Why are there rumors of disappearance? Why does the princess need so many people? It's rumored that those maids were orphans. After being sent out of the palace by the queen, no one knew where they went, so they were rumored to be missing. Of course, we servants cannot know. I have been here for so many years, and I have only seen the princess a few times. She is wearing a veil, both noble and gentle, but it seems like 5 years ago. I feel like the princess has changed someone, I can't say it, but I have this intuition." The doll-faced maid sighed a few times and said with a restrained expression, "Did something happen 5 years ago?" Qi Luyi vaguely felt that it must have been unusual to see it repeatedly these 5 years ago. After listening, the doll-faced maid looked left and right and leaned in front of them, whispering, "I know this, but I also heard what the person involved said. You must keep this matter confidential." After seeing Qi Lu and the others nod their heads, she whispered, "Everyone knows that the queen has a very close sister, who is Empress Qi. The king married 2 wives at the same time, one as the queen and the other as his concubine. But when the king discovered that Empress Qi had an affair with a man of unknown origin, he intended to be executed together, but was stopped by the queen. After pleading for mercy, he left Empress Qi aside and moved into the easternmost palace, where he was not allowed to leave without permission. But just 5 years ago, a big fire broke out in Empress Xi's palace, and she died in the accident. Someone found a living little girl at the scene, suspected to be Empress Xi's daughter. Everyone said that since the girl did not have the blood of the king, why stay? However, the kind-hearted queen still kept her as her own flesh and blood. But it is said that this girl is bloodthirsty. Time's up, we should also go back. Please help yourselves, ladies." The maid, who had not been involved in the conversation, suddenly interjected and immediately grabbed the hand of the doll-faced maid who had not finished speaking before, turning around and walking out of the yard. Before Duan Miao Miao could even retract his startled chin, he saw the maid's figure getting farther and farther away, as if trying to avoid something. "It's a pity, I haven't finished listening yet," said Shan Jing, still unsatisfied. Duan Miao Miao nodded regretfully and said, "But it seems like I've eaten an amazing melon." Qi Luyi said, "So there are so many people in this story. It seems that finding out the truth is not just about the disappearance of the maid. However, it is still unclear what the accident 5 years ago had to do with the princess's illness, and where is the daughter of Empress Qi? Shan Jing looked in the direction where the maid was leaving and said, "It feels like they are deliberately concealing something, especially the maid who has been silent, as if she is keeping silent about her daughter." End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Skin Replacement. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Skin Replacement. Qi Luyi also noticed that the maid was so anxious to interrupt the conversation. Unless the daughter had some unknown secrets or something that could never be spoken of, it would not be avoided. Just it's quite curious, the unfinished words make people itch. But there was no other way. As night approached, the three of them said goodbye and went back to their rooms to rest. Duan Miao Miao said with a listless expression, "I have a bold guess. Since Empress Qi died in that fire, the fire must have been very intense. Will her daughter also be affected, such as disfigurement?" Qi Luyi also thought the same way. He opened the panel to check and stared at the word "skin change" in a daze. It was indeed difficult not to think of this. "Do you know, painted skin, Qi Lu pondered for a moment before throwing this question at Duan Miao Miao. "Are you saying?" Duan Miao Miao squinted his eyes and looked meaningfully at Qi Luyi. The latter nodded slowly and said, "It's just my guess. It's very likely that this daughter was disfigured in a fire 5 years ago. The queen also discovered the secret about this girl, but did not reveal it. She used the princess's name to search for her skin." After hearing this, Duan Miao Miao felt goosebumps all over his body. He rubbed his arms up and down a few times and said, "Lie down, this queen is too abnormal. I didn't expect it to be too stimulating. But now there are too few clues, and we still need to be summoned before we can further search for information." However, what Qi Lu couldn't figure out was, if this was the truth, what kind of role did the princess play in this story? Why did the plot only mention this princess? What is the queen's purpose and motivation, and why is her mission to find the princess, rather than the daughter of Empress Qi? Cough. Cough. Clack. Clack. A rough voice came from outside the door, interrupting Qi Luyi's thoughts. The two of them followed the sound and met an eye in the crack of the door. The eye on the crack in the door was still covered in blood, staring at the two of them like a cracked eye. I don't know how long it had been staring at the crack in the door, but the corner of the eye was already congested. The sound of rough breathing echoed through the crack in the door, appearing so noisy in the silent space at this moment. With a thud, Duan Miao Miao fell backwards with a stool. Qi Lu's blank mind was running again at this moment. He turned his head to look at the stool lying on the ground, and when he turned back again, his eyes under the door were already gone. So, what kind of thing is that? Duan Miao Miao trembled and stood up from the ground, running behind Qi Lu and patting him. Qi Luyi was also greatly frightened. He dodged the palm that Duan Miao Miao had hit, slowly got up, picked up the chair next to the table, walked to the door, extended his slightly trembling hand, and took a half step back with his left foot, ready to escape at any time. Suddenly opening the door, raising the stool high, ready to smash it downwards. But there was no one outside the door, as usual, except for the rustling of leaves in the wind. Qi Luyi was relaxing his tense body and was about to turn around when he stared at the door and froze. Duan Miao Miao cautiously moved over to see what he was looking at, but caught his eye on the scratched door frame. Several deep scratches stood between the frames, possibly due to excessive force, and blood could be faintly seen between the scratches, which was shocking. What the fuck? Duan Miao Miao didn't realize that she had been frightened and her vocabulary had increased. She usually likes to read horror novels, horror movies, and it's just how she gets twisted. She enjoys it all, but when she truly experiences it, the impact it brings is completely different. Qi Lu dragged Duan Miao Miao, who was stunned, into the room and came out with a handkerchief to wipe off the bloodstains on the door frame. After looking left and right, he closed the door, checked the door lock, walked inside, extinguished the lamp, and urged Duan Miao Miao to rest in bed. Duan Miao Miao may not have regained his composure and lay on the bed, patting his chest silently. Qi Lu covered his head with a blanket, afraid to make any sound. When he closed his eyes, his mind was filled with congested eyes. He thought he might not have been accustomed to the impact of this fear, but he knew he had to get used to it, otherwise he would be devoured by fear and must live. Must survive, very familiar words. It seems like I've heard them somewhere before. Qi Luyi slowly fell asleep in this belief. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Skin Replacement. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Skin Replacement. The third day of the nightmare quietly arrived, waiting for Qi Duan, and the two of them were still tormented by etiquette and unknown fear. Qi Lu muddled through the morning's trials, while Duan Miao Miao remained the most miserable one to be scolded by Wang Mama. The two of them had a tacit understanding and didn't mention anything about yesterday. When Shan Jing realized their mistake, she came to greet them. Duan Miao Miao waved his hand and shook his head, worried that this matter would have too much impact on Shan Jing. He cried and fainted, but then realized he didn't mention it. Qi Luyi simply explained that there was someone outside the window last night, reminding Shan Jing to be careful. As expected, Shan Jing's face instantly turned pale, her pupils trembled slightly, and she nodded slightly. Duan Miao Miao saw it and used his elbow to touch Qi Luyi. He quickly changed the topic and said, "I'm starving. Let's go eat first. Maybe it was some pervert who came to sneak a peek at us for beauty yesterday. Don't worry, just be careful." Qi Luyi. "I'm using too much force." Shan Jing took a breath, thank you, but was not comforted. After each person finished their meal, Qi Lu sat at the round table thinking about today's target NPC. In fact, Qi Lu admires Duan Miao Miao quite a bit. He saw that scene yesterday, but the innocent girl's mentality is quite good. Duan Miao Miao seemed to see what his heart was thinking and approached with a playful smile. "Do you secretly admire sister in your heart?" To be honest, sister was also scared yesterday, but it's not enough to be afraid. You and I were just scared. In the future, when these things happen, I allow you to hide in my arms and moan. Qi Luyi. I don't know who was hiding behind me last night. Finally, it's time for free rest in the afternoon. Duan Miao Miao feels like he can't sit idly by today. He must find an NPC to eat and squint around the crowd. As soon as Qi Lu saw Duan Miao Miao's eyes brighten, he hurriedly followed him. As expected, he saw the latter walk up to Wang Mama and pretend to be obedient, handing over a cup of tea, and then said, "Wang Mama taught us hard work. When can we go to the Queen's side?" Wang Mama glanced at Duan Miao Miao. She remembered this girl, who taught so many students, and this was the worst she had ever taught. So she disdainfully said, "You. In the next life." Duan Miao Miao. Damn it, so angry. With a twisted face, Duan Miao Miao secretly rolled his eyes in his heart and continued, "Where is the daughter of Empress Xi? She's so pitiful. Will the Queen send us to take care of her?" Perhaps she hadn't heard of this name from anyone else for a long time. Wang Mama tilted her lips downwards and said, "What are you asking about this? What does it have to do with you?" Duan Miao Miao saw a scene and said, "I just heard a little before and felt sorry for her. What's so pitiful about a crazy monster?" Wang Mama interrupted Duan Miao Miao's words, then stood up and brushed her sleeves before leaving. As soon as Qi Lu arrived, he heard these words and saw the figure of Wang Mama leaving. He thought to himself that it was indeed true. Duan Miao Miao and Qi Luyi restored the conversation they had just had and once again mentioned the latter's speculation. "Guess there is a doubt, will the Queen really find skin for Empress Xi's daughter?" The attitude of the master inevitably affects the attitude of the servants, and it is not difficult to imagine that the Queen's attitude towards the daughter of Empress Xi is not as good as people say. Wang Mama's words confirmed this point. Is Empress Xi's daughter really a monster? And for whom was this skin exchanged? The two of them called Shan Jing to the entrance of the courtyard and said Wang Mama's words as well as Qi Luyi's speculation. Shan Jing twisted her fingers around the hem of her clothes and lowered her head, saying, "I just want to leave here. We just need to find the princess. We need to find her quickly. I feel like something's wrong here." Duan Miao Miao stared at the grass in front of his feet and let go of his thoughts. Suddenly, he thought he had discovered something and patted Qi Luyi's shoulder. Qi Lu looked in the direction she pointed, and there were a few faint drops of blood in the lush grass that couldn't be seen without careful examination. Qi Lu squatted down and leaned closer to the grass, and the dried-up blood marks were very new, as if they had just dripped on. Looking up at the grassland ahead, there are indeed several places within 10 meters. Qi Lu stood up and walked over. The bloodstains extended towards the east and walked back at the corner of the yard. "Let's go take a look," Qi Lu said without looking back and continued walking forward. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Skin Replacement. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Skin Replacement. Duan Miao Miao immediately picked up Shan Jing's hand and followed Qi Luyi. The three of them followed the bloodstains towards the east, turned the corner of the yard, and a small path with a diameter led to the back of the yard. The path was not paved with stone slabs and should have been artificially stepped on. Qi Lu used his feet to scrape open the grass deep in his calves and walked to the end of the bloodstains, where two houses were standing together. There is smoke wafting out from the roof of the house on the right, and a faint aroma of food can be smelled. It should be the kitchen. The window of the left room opened wide, and Qi Lu walked up to check. Inside the room were piles of hay and bundles of firewood. After Duan Miao Miao and Shan Jing arrived, they saw that the kitchen door had opened a crack, and the blood had disappeared in front of the door. Qi Lu raised his index finger and placed it on his lips to signal silence. The three of them tiptoed towards the door, and the closer they entered, the more they could hear the sound inside. It is similar to the sound of hungry animals chewing food. Shan Jing was already trembling with fear, and Duan Miao Miao gently patted her as comfort. Qi Lu looked through the crack in the door and saw a girl squatting in front of the smoking stove, with her back facing the door. Her hair was disheveled, her clothes were dirty, and she grabbed something from the ground with her hands and placed it on her mouth. The sound of chewing was made by her. Duan Miao Miao also leaned closer to the crack in the door and patted Qi Luyi, handing him a palm-sized stone that she found at some point. Shan Jing also picked up a piece in her hand. Qi Lu understood her meaning and used this self-defense, just in case. With this in mind, he slowly pushed open the door in front of him. The small sound hit the hearts of the three people outside the door, and they couldn't help but take a deep breath at the same time. The girl, inside the room, caught the faint sound, stopped her movements, froze for a few seconds, and then slowly turned around. The three of them stared with bated breath, waiting to see the face hidden under the messy hair of the person in front of them. Ah! A scream pierced through the sky, and Shan Jing covered her eyes and ran away, but she didn't run far and fainted on the ground. Qi Duan and his companion seemed to have their feet nailed in place, being pulled back to their thoughts by Shan Jing's screams, but unable to manage her situation. Their pupils reflected the face of the girl. No, it can be said that it shouldn't be the same person. That girl clearly has no face, her whole face looks like she has been burned, with blood red mixed with yellow and white tissue, and is terrifying. The two holes seem to be unable to wrap around the eyeballs at a glance, protruding outward, with blood streaks crawling through the trembling pupils, causing congestion at the corners of the eyes. Below her eyes, which should be the area of her nose, are two small holes that slightly open and close. She has no mouth, skin and her decayed teeth are exposed, with residual flesh debris hanging from her teeth. Perhaps it was the piercing scream that made the girl shrink her body and lean towards the stove, her teeth trembling and making a clicking sound. The two of them looked at the scene in front of them, their throats seemed to be choked and unable to speak. They saw what the girl had in her hand, yes, she was just gnawing on a lump of raw meat. After seeing the two people in front of her, the girl slowly crawled over with her hands and feet, reaching out to grab something from them. Her mouth opened and closed, and she let out a hee-hee sound in her throat. Duan Miao Miao covered his ears and closed his eyes. Cold sweat had already soaked his inner robe. Qi Lu widened his eyes and clearly saw the girl's mouth open and closed, as if saying something. He struggled to control his blank mind to distinguish. At this moment, several guards and maids rushed in behind the two of them, roughly dragging the ground and walking towards the door. After a while, you ran out of the room. How many times have you been there? If the queen finds out, we won't be able to eat and walk around. Hurry up, you monster. A guard glared angrily and said. The girl roared with heart-wrenching cries as she walked further and further away. Duan Miao Miao suddenly felt his legs and feet weak, and he fell to the ground, pressing his heart and kicking his thick breath. Qi Lu stared at the leftover meat in front of him, and the face of the girl appeared in front of him. Murmured to himself, "Help," she said, "help me." End of this chapter.